Welcome to your lesson on how to write an introduction for your informative essay. What is the purpose of an introduction? First, you need to get the reader interested in what you have to say. Secondly, you also need to let the reader know what it is you are going to say within that essay. And finally, the all-important context. Your introductory paragraph should provide context for the reader so that they do understand your essay. What are the parts of an introduction? Now, hopefully this is review. First, you'll see a hook. Secondly, you'll see a sentence or two of transition. And finally, always the last sentence in an introduction, you will see your thesis statement. In fact, the thesis statement is the most important and powerful statement throughout your essay. And so we're actually going to begin there, even though the hook is the first sentence. The thesis statement in an informative essay should tell the reader what the main idea of your essay is. It also should give your reader a roadmap by telling him or her the three major points of your essay. Finally, when your reader is finished reading just that thesis statement, they will know not only your main idea and your three major points, but will even know the order of those three major points. So let's use the example Watsons Go to Birmingham in 1963 and start to put an example introduction together. So if we are to use a thesis statement just like the one you will be using for your informative essay, our Watsons example would look like this. The Watsons Go to Birmingham 1963 takes place during the Civil Rights Movement, as evidenced by the characters, setting, and plot. So let's put this thesis statement to the test and make sure that it's serving its purpose. First, what is the main or central idea of this informative essay? Well, the Watsons Go to Birmingham 1963 takes place during the Civil Rights Movement. There you go. So we see right away what the main idea of this essay is to let us know that that novel is taking place during a specific time in history. What are the three major points of the essay? Well, the rest of this statement says, as evidenced by the characters, setting, and plot. So what I know about these three major points is that they will provide evidence about characters, 1, setting, 2, and plot, 3. And finally, this last question. What do I know about the order of the body paragraphs because of this thesis statement? Well, I know for sure body paragraph 1 will be about characters, body paragraph 2 will be about setting, and body paragraph 3 will be about plot, because these three, being in this particular order, also predicts the order of the body paragraphs. So let's back up then and go to our first sentence of the introduction, the hook. The purpose of the hook is to hook the reader into your topic. You're giving an attention getter, so that will draw the reader into your essay. Usually there's 3 types that you deal with. 1 is a bold statement, 2 is a statistic or a specific fact, and then finally you could also use a quote as a hook. All 3 are effective. But for our example and for your informative essay, we are all going to use a statistic for our hook. So, thinking about the Watsons Go to Birmingham and the fact that we need to use a statistic in our hook, the central idea of this essay is to prove that the novel took place during the Civil Rights Movement. And we also know from our reading that the novel is based on the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. So, okay. I think what we should do is choose a statistic that's related to violence that took place during the Civil Rights Movement. So, for our example, a hook that we might use would be, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, 40 people were killed during the Civil Rights Movement from 1954 to 1968, murdered for being an activist in the movement or killed by acts of terror to intimidate Blacks. So it's a statistic. That means it's a definite and specific fact. 40 people were killed. And it also gives us the dates of the civil rights movement. I've also made note of my source information. Whenever you use outside sources, you always want to be sure that you keep track of that. And at this point, for our introduction, we have 2 parts done. We have our hook, we have our thesis. All we have to do now is figure out how to get from here to here. And that will be with our transition. The transition's job is to provide context for the reader. So you want to smoothly connect that hook to the thesis statement. Now, for this particular essay, your context is going to be in 2 parts. You'll have historical context for that statistic you've provided, and you'll also provide some context for the novel so that the thesis statement makes sense. Now, The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963, is still our example that we're using. How could I give enough context to this statistic so that the reader could understand better what is happening here? Well, the reader may know nothing about the civil rights movement. We kind of have to assume that to some degree. And if he doesn't know anything about the civil rights movement, he also doesn't know about the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing. Okay. Since the hook talks about violence during that movement and is specifically talking about how many people were killed, I could give some more information to provide context so the reader understands a bit better this period of history. So I've added 4 of these victims. So I'm referring to giving context to these 40 people that were killed. 4 of these victims were Addie Mae Collins, Denise McNair, Carol Robertson, and Cynthia Wesley, who were killed on September 15, 1963, when members of the Ku Klux Klan bombed the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama during Sunday school. Now here's where we are with our building of an introduction. We have our hook, we have the first part of our transition, which gives context to the hook, and now we just need a bit more transition to give context to the novel. That will be our last step. So, to provide novel context, well, how can I best do that so that the reader has a general idea of what the story is about? And how can I give context to the novel so the reader can connect it to that historical context that we just gave about the civil rights movement? Well, the reader probably has no idea what the novel is about, so a summary would be a great way to give context. The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963, by Christopher Paul Curtis. The Watson family travels to Birmingham, Alabama during the civil rights movement. The youngest Watson, Joetta, is at Sunday school on the day of the bombing. And now we have our entire introduction. It's got the hook, both parts of the transition, giving historical context and context for the novel, and then finally, that thesis statement. So all 4 parts to this particular introduction were given. Remember, you can go back to any slide that you need to for clarification. Once you've done that, if you have further questions, see either one of your teachers. Best of luck.